Good morning, Mr. Colin Henry, it is, isn't it?
How do you do? Yes.
Yes, okay. Now, you were a Mountain View boy, and I imagine that your family were original settlers down there on that New Park farm.
They were. They came there when the big trees were big trees. And the forest was really all forest. And they built a house, which is still there today.
I know that house.
Yeah, and when my family left, great-grandfather left North of Ireland, he went to England on the express purpose of going to Australia. When he got to England, the boat had gone. He says it had gone. He'd missed it. And he had a family. He had his wife and family, and he got the next boat. Consequently, that boat that they missed never got here.
Oh, is that right?
It foundered out on the Western Australian coast, all hands.
My God, so you could almost have not been here.
Couldn't have been here. Anyway, the next time he got to this boat he caught, the next boat, went to New Zealand, Auckland, New Zealand. He got off there and he got a house there and he got employment there, but he said he was a farmer, not a worker, and he wanted to farm. And he was in correspondence with an auntie in South Yarra in Melbourne. And she said, come over here. And he left the family in Auckland and he got on a tramp steamer and worked his way across to Melbourne. And he got to South Yarra and he built a house. And the house is still there. Anyway, apparently he got out to Druin South and the lady directed him, put him on the wrong road. He went down the Ripplebrook Road looking for a farm.
How did he?
Said,
all right.
He says, those trees are no good here. They're spindly. The land can't be any good. And he went back to Druin South and the lady told him, go out to Mountain View. If you want big trees, that's where they are. He went out there and he pegged out a block of a square mile. That's the new park as it is today.
Yes, the old original square mile.
The original square mile.
Now, I've been told that when you first settle a place, you have to fence off a certain number of acres and build a dwelling. Would his first dwelling might have even been a bark hut, might it?
No, I don't know whether it was or not, but they built this house and they sawed the weatherboards down the front paddock, one up top and one underneath. Sawed the logs up and made weatherboards. The weatherboards that are on that house are gum. You try and put a nail in them today, you cannot. They're as hard as iron. I've tried. The great-grandfather made them. A big bushfire came through in 1878 and, would you believe it, missed the house.
Gosh, that's pretty good.
Pretty good, and actually it did a great job. It burnt all the bush for them and they made a farm out of it.
Fantastic. Now let's get to you. When were you born?
When I was born in 24th of April 1929. So I had 3 brothers and a sister.
Ah, now was that Strzelecki train running can you remember it?
I can remember being on it to try home with me grandma. I can remember that, and I would have been under 10, but I can't remember anything else really. It used to go right through to Strzelecki, and then they had to stop it because one of the bridges was shaky.
Yes, I know that old trestle bridge.
They had to stop it, and they folded it up, and they used to only come to Try Home. That's East Pawong. They used to terminate there, and I used to see it there during the war. When we were at state school at East Poong, used to see the train coming up and the engine was coming up backwards. And there was no turntable there at Tri-Home, and they went back forwards. They used to take cattle, and they used to bring up super and everything up from Melbourne to the farmers and unload it. Dad used to go get the carrier to pick up the super and bring it back from Tri-Home in the early days. Yeah.
How were you set up there at New Park for running water and electricity? There was no electricity.
No electricity, and we didn't have a phone. We had tank water. We only had a 1,000-gallon tank at the house. That's all. And they seemed to manage with that.
How did you, pump water with a windmill, or how did you do it?
There was a well right beside the house, but we fed the cattle with that. It had a pump on it, and we used to have to pump it out into a trough out there for the cattle.
And home for a lot of tiger snakes too, wasn't it?
Well, yes. Sid Horner, he concreted the top of the well on. That stopped us from looking down into the water. We couldn't get in. They put a lid on it, which was too heavy for us. The lavatory was around the corner. That building was covered in ivy. Real homes for snakes, but it was made of logs. And believe it or not, they were blackwood logs.
Gosh.
And it had overgrown with the ivy, and it was starting to rot away. We had it as a chook house, and the chooks used to get out through the roof. It was my job to go and lock the door, stop the foxes from getting in.
Runaway chooks and a blackwood thunderbox. Sounds really good. But you had tiger snakes living in that well, didn't you?
Oh, yes. We had tiger snakes in the well. They used to fall in. Old Sid Horner was a bit of a carpenter. Dad got him to come and he put a sleep out on the house, which me brother Don and Lindsay and I used to sleep in.
That was like a walled-in veranda.
Walled-in veranda, yeah.
Back to electricity. Did you have the house wired up to a generator or wind power or anything?
No, we had a Coleman lamp, used shellite. And we used to have it on the table in the kitchen, and we used to sit around it for warmth. And we did have a fireplace in the house. There was a triple chimney in the house, which is gone now. It had a fireplace on it, and we used to light the fire there if we got terrible cold. And Mum used to have the stove in the corner, and there used to be a fireplace in the lounge room.
Now, what sort of things did you get up to as a kid? You know, what pastime?
Mischief. I was always getting beltings. I was always teasing my younger brother, apparently, and he'd be howling and I'd get the blame for it, and I'd get the belting. I got many a belting, I tell you.
Yeah, but what did you do, like chase rabbits? And
oh, well...
Did you have to cut ferns?
Yeah, we had rabbit traps on the boundary fence. Next door neighbour, he had the rabbits, and the fence had holes in it. And we used to set traps there. We'd take the lantern at night to go around them, and Don and Lindsay, they had their traps too, and I used to have a couple of traps and go and get the rabbits before we went to bed. When we woke up in the morning, we would go around them again. Sometimes you'd only find a foot in them. The fox had got the rabbit, and the rabbit had got away.
Now, you'd eat a fair bit of that then, wouldn't you?
We did. We ate rabbit quite often. Mum used to be able to cook beautiful rabbits. She used to fry them, and we had them in white sauce.
Yes, we had rabbit. We lived on rabbit.
We only went to the town once a fortnight. The rest of the goods we got was from the Currumborough factory we sent to.
Yes, I know all about that. On the milk truck, we used to do that too.
The cream truck. Mum used to make the bread and used to deliver the groceries. You order them and they'd come out in the cream can. We had a good living. Mum used to do all the cooking, and if we had visitors, Mum used to mix up a sponge by hand. She'd have it done in no time. And she'd have sponges, great big square sponges and double round ones, and scones. She could cook scones just like that.
Now, there weren't cars around in those days, and horses was the go.
Yeah.
Horses and carts and draft horses. How did you go? Did you used to work the draft horses?
We did have a jinker and a jinker horse, and we had draft horses. My uncle used to live next door, and he had two good draft horses, Duke and Prince. Duke had a blue eye, and Duke was as cunning as an old fox. And if he was out cutting the hay, cutting the grass, Artie yelled out for dinner, Uncle would never hear it, or we'd never hear it. Duke would hear it. He'd stop dead. He'd never do another step until we went home to dinner.
What a clever horse.
Oh, he was a clever fella, but he was a good horse.
I'll say.
He knew it was lunchtime. Yeah. In the later part, Uncle bought a new McCormick mower, and he had the two good horses, and I used to use the two good horses in the mower. And Prince, he was the sweep horse. He was the bigger one of the two.
You mean he'd operate the hay sweep?
Yeah, the hay sweep. Yeah, he'd operate that.
So he knew what to do?
He knew what to do, and I was the sweep operator. We used to have to cart it into the stack or into the shed. Push it into the shed. We had a big shed. There was about 5 of them built in the district, and we had the last one that was available.
I know, I remember that shed. I remember when it blew away too.
Yeah, and it was very little timber in it, and it stayed the distance, and I used to climb up on the roof. I used to climb up there. I was the climber of the family. I used to climb all the pine trees that I could. I used to climb up the top.
Yeah, we used to do that
and
too.
And look down.
Back to the haystacks. Yeah, they were loose haystacks in those days,
yes,
weren't
they?
they?
Loose haystacks. We got a grab stacker. You used a grab stacker on the silage, and that was hard work. That was. Duke never used to like pulling the green stuff into the stack. For that.
Too heavy.
It was pretty heavy. Dad used to have other 2 horses before I could remember. He used to plough up a paddock and sow oats, and he used to have a binder. He used to put the sheaves out and used to have to stoke them, and I was too young to be able to stoke them then in those days. But he used to have oat and hay. They did have a big oaten stack down near the house there at one stage, and I remember the pigs. Dad used to have pigs in those days. I remember the pigs used to plough up the paddock, root up the paddock, the whole paddock, and they used to be ploughed up, and then Dad had put rings in the noses where we weren't allowed to see that happening, and we used to hear them pigs squealing when they were getting the rings in their noses, and that used to stop them from rooting the ground up.
Some people used to deliberately use pigs to plough an area of ground.
Probably
did you?
did. Dad used to have a single flowered plough. I remember following Dad with the horses and the single flowered plough on the front paddock. I know things was done very miserly. We didn't have a great lot of materials to do anything with, and we didn't have any money either. They were getting very little for their cream, their butterfat. We used to have, the policemen used to come for statistics, and boy, were we threatened. That policeman was going to take us away. We used to go and hide under the bed when policemen come for the statistics. He used to come and write the statistics down of what cattle and everything we had and what area the place was and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And they stopped that after a while, and to our delight, the policemen never came then.
That might have been about wartime, was it? Would that have been to do with that?
That was before the war. We had a good life. We had an old T-model Ford, and Dad couldn't afford a battery for it. He used to crank it to start it, but he used to have to jack the back wheel up, put it up on a jack, and the wheel would be going around, Dad would be cranking it, and the wheel would be going around. But I can't remember, I didn't see him take the jack out, how he did that. But
to get it started.
He got it started, yeah, and crank it and start it. And that old T-model Ford used to take us to Dandenong as quick as what you can do it today. And the tyres were ball tyres. They were second-hand tyres, and we never went very far with it, but that's what he had in the first place. And he bought he was in a Druin one time there, and there was an Oldsmobile car, a 27 Oldsmobile, and he had enough money to buy it. There was no hire purchase in those days. To get lender money, you had to have the money to pay for it. So I don't know how much he paid for it, but we thought we were marvellous. We had an Oldsmobile car, and it had curtains on it. And the old T-model, it never had curtains. You had to have rugs in the car in the cold weather, otherwise you'd freeze. But
it had no sides.
No curtains. No, we just had open all row round.
So what's a favourite memory of your childhood growing up out in the country there?
Oh, well, Mum's cooking and making the bread and kneeling the bread on the kitchen table behind the door. She'd be there kneeling it, putting it in the dish, put it over near the stove and wait till it rose up. She had the blanket on it. When it got up to the top, she'd take it over and put it on the table again and cut it up and kneel it again and put it into another dish, make 2 dishes of it. And she had that stove red hot, and put it in the tins and put it in the oven, and boy, it used to come out beautiful bread. And we used to fight one another for the crust. We used to eat the crust. We used to fight one another for the crust. Yeah, the hot water we got from the shed had to be carried over in kerosene tins. Mum had to do that to do the washing.
The good old kerosene tins,
The good old kerosene tin. And until, Dad got Mr. McIntosh, he was a bricklayer, to come and put in a copper. And she thought she was made. She could boil the sheets up in the copper.
I know, they were wonderful things, weren't they?
Wonderful thing. She did have cold water on the trough. She didn't have any Hills washing line. She just had an 8-gauge wire right round and around the paddock. And she used to have that full. I could remember it being there, and it had props underneath it. And one day, someone forgot to put the prop up in front of the garage. Dad backed the car out, pulled the hood off the car. That was a catastrophe. It was a catastrophe. They had to sew the blooming hood back on with cotton and wool. I was too small to do it, but the others had to do it. They sewed it back on, and we had to have a new hood.
Oh, so this is a soft top car.
This was the Oldsmobile, yeah, and it had a gear lever. This Oldsmobile car, whereas the old T-model, Oh, I think it did have gear levers, but they would make it go. But then the war came, and we had to have petrol for the car, and we had an old Cliff and Bunting engine in the shed to drive the machines. It was a hit and miss engine.
What do you mean a hit and miss engine?
It used to go bang, 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 bang. And anyway, it was a beast of a thing to get to go. And the only plug that was in the blimmin' thing was out of the car.
Oh.
Used to be out of the car. And it was the only plug that'd go on it. But we used to get it to go, and it used to drive the milking plant. We eventually got the power on, and we were able to get a Century motor. It was during the war, and we were able to get a 3 horsepower Century motor. Well, they were the best motor you could buy. And we never had any trouble with the electric motor, but we had trouble with the switch. The switch used to switch off, be going away and be milking the cow, and switch it off. And we eventually got a new switch to put on it, and that was okay. We had to have 2 poles from the main pole, and we couldn't get the insulators. They weren't manufacturing insulators. We had to go without insulators we didn't get any power on until we got the insulators. We eventually got the insulators and put them on, and we thought they were made when we got the power on.
That was one of my brother's pastimes, throwing stones with shanghais at the insulators and breaking them.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say growing up in the country is a pretty good way to go, wouldn't you?
I'd say so, yeah. Well, I lived 25 years at Mountain View. It's the first of my life.
Well, thank you very much for telling me a few things about your life out in Mountain View.
A pleasure to do that. Yeah, just to meet someone that I can talk about home over there.